Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're located. This is Stephen Applebaum. I'm the managing partner of Insurance Solutions Group. I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. And we appreciate your attendance. We've got a large number of people online. We intend to leave plenty of time for Q&A after the comments from our three panelists. We thank them for being with us. And as you can see on your screen, today we have Kamna Tripathi, Craig Milroy, and Patrick Egmunonu with us. I think just before I introduce each of the panelists, I would like to share some more extensive bio background for context for each of those folks. But just stepping back for a moment, today's webinar, which carries the title Sharpen Your Competitive Edge, Drive Action from AI and Advanced Analytics, is presented in a run-up to our conference in September in Toronto, Insurance, AI, and Analytics. And we'll talk more about that. All of today's presenters, along with many other industry leaders and executives, will be presenting at that conference, and we'll tell you more about that. But to move into to focus on today's webinar, let me, if I may, just set some background. Basically, our overview for today is that we're in an extremely competitive insurance industry environment in Canada, in the US, and worldwide, and it's facing disruption at every level, from smaller and agile startups to the largest tech giants. Really, the only way that carriers can survive in this environment is by driving real business value from AI and advanced analytics. And let me say a word here, if I may. I know that the terminology AI probably is getting overused and overhyped and perhaps misused at times, but to be clear, it is absolutely underutilized and has tremendous potential across all aspects of the insurance enterprise. And that's precisely what we're going to focus on digging into and explaining today and at the conference. So we've got sort of three central themes today. One is building the case for artificial intelligence. The second is moving from descriptive to predictive analytics. And the third is realizing the promise of AI and advanced analytics. And in order to start digging down into that information, I'd like to start presenting our panelists for today. Each of them are going to share some thoughts and ideas and experiences for about 10 minutes each, following which we'll do some extensive Q&A, and we really look forward to your questions. And those that don't get answered today on this webinar can be answered in follow-up. So let me start, if I may, by introducing Kamna Tripathi. Kamna is the Vice President and Director of Global Markets for TD Securities. Please pardon, the slightly lengthy bios and backgrounds that I'm going to share, but I think they're going to shed a lot of sort of light and context on the experience of these individuals and the information they share today. I think they'll be helpful. So Kamna, her professional experiences span capital markets, digital sales, investment, strategic analysis, and product management. And one of her more unique stints, she shares, was to organize the first ever fireside conversation between President Bill Clinton and George Bush, which took place in Canada. Kamna identifies as an adaptable global soul, having worked in Asia, Europe, and North America, and traveled to over 50 countries. Kamna also values community engagement, and as a board member, I found this particularly interesting, a board member of Story Planet, a not-for-profit that inspires at-risk children and youth to develop their unique voices using the written words, visual arts, and media. So with that, please, everybody, welcome Kamna, and we look forward to your comments, and then we'll move on to the others.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for that very warm introduction. I'll try to. I think that was the best introduction today that I've heard so far. So no, this is a very important topic, and I'll keep my brief to being quite brief. And really, you mentioned that AI is underutilized and it has tremendous potential, and we are here to make a case for that, but we also all know on this call and on this panel, I'm sure, that how important it is and how we actually don't need to make a case for it as much as we need to understand how to leverage it, how to utilize it. The fact that you mentioned that it is underutilized is absolutely accurate, and we live and breathe it. It is something that the organizations are grappling with, trying to understand how best both we can try to understand it, use it, and find talent that can help us do that. So it is no secret that the insurance industry is fundamentally changing thanks to innovation. Really, the financial services industry is fundamentally changing with fintech and particularly in innovations in artificial intelligence. There is prediction that for 2018, insurance data will grow by about 94%, and 84% of which will be unstructured documentation, and technology is being introduced that is revolutionizing the industry in its entirety. The investments we know are at peak for fintech and insurtech in particular as well, all over the world. There's studies that have quoted that there's 36% more investment, or about $2 billion that has been invested across about 500 startups during the course of last year alone. So we all are recognizing the importance of this, and importance of artificial intelligence, importance of how much data there is, how much growing data there is, and how important it is to understand data. I heard in one of the seminars that the real commodity, the real asset in the future is actually going to be data. And within the insurance industry itself, insurers are dealing with increasing amounts of highly variable documents. It's not just insurance industries, it's the banking world as well, the financial industry overall, capital markets as well, and including forms, emails, invoices, claims, policy comparisons that are all processed manually. And which is why the new technologies from insurtech startups are becoming more and more relevant, and they are digitally revolutionizing the process of management and administration of large amounts of documentation. And this is why AI is so important, and number of insurers are seeing huge benefits of working with AI to significantly reduce the time and costs spent on these administrative tasks, as well as the countable risks of human error. In past, AI solutions have always been sort of looked at as a bit of a high-ticket investment in terms of costs and times, usually implemented for business IT projects. They've been very sort of mammoth kind of initiatives and have not really deliver the results that they were meant to deliver. And hence, how we go about utilizing artificial intelligence and making sense of the data is going to be very important, there is a massive amount of transformation that is going to be required, both in terms of culture, how leadership direction is given towards this transformation. So, we can't emphasize enough the importance of data out there and making sense of data and everything that goes with data management, including protecting data in a way. So I'm going to leave it at that and pass it back to you, Stephen.
Thanks so much, Kamna. We're going to dig deeper, I'm sure, through the Q&A period into some of the things you've shared with us. But I'll just add, for the moment, before we move on, that something you mentioned about data being the real asset. I believe it was the CEO of IBM, Ginny Rometty, who recently said that data is the new oil, and that sort of stuck in my mind. So it underscores what you said. Next presenter is Craig Milroy, and Craig is the Director of Enterprise Data Architecture for Sun Life Financial. And again, I'd like to share, if I may, some background and perspective on Craig's experience. As a results-oriented data and analytics leader, Craig's career spans 15 years of business strategy enablement within enterprise data and analytics architecture and digital transformation roles. He has led many data-centric digital transformation initiatives to enable strategic business growth through the deployment of industry-leading data and analytics capabilities. Craig has worked with financial services and telecommunications industries, including the TD Bank Group, U.S., Rogers Communications, Harris Bank Chicago, and BMO Financial Group. Currently, Craig leads global data and analytics architecture for Sun Life Financial, with oversight for AI, machine learning, and data science capability enablement. Obviously, very well qualified for today's topics, and we look forward to your comments, Craig.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. A lot of this whole AI conversation reminds me a lot of big data from maybe about 10 years ago, where everyone was doing it, apparently, and not doing it well. And at the same time, every vendor and every marketing group, because the executives were engaging, saying, you need big data. And no one quite could understand or really define what big data is. And today, I think we're in the same space, because AI means something for everyone. And, we talk about the skills shortage, the capability gaps, yet it seems that every vendor has an AI solution. So we really need to think about, what AI means in terms of the artificial intelligence. Is it augmented intelligence? Is it supporting the human interaction? So, within Sun Life, we're trying to, work through that conversation and ensure that, we're all on the same page and that we actually have, capabilities defined of what we're trying to achieve. That being said, it's really about the data and what's missing today within Sun Life and many large, insurance organizations globally. A lot of legacy debt and a lot of that data and capability locked within those legacy systems. So the approach that we're taking is really, how do we rethink that? And how do we start to move those legacy systems into a digital space? So leading the digital transformation effort, we're going to start to unlock that data from those legacy systems. And that data will underpin our future direction. And digital transformation is sort of built into data analytics and then AI. And really, you cannot have digital transformation without AI and cloud. I think is the real two key tenets as we go forward. So using those pieces, it's really laying the foundation of how do we start to move digitally in the next generation, and how do we support new business capabilities? How do we defend against the insure tech startups that are coming along? How do we think differently? And we're doing that. So we're looking at how do we start to change the culture to be more data centric? How do we think differently around more of a startup mentality around the whole digital opportunities that we have? And then looking at AI, open source, and cloud that brings those capabilities at a lower cost, time to market than what we weren't able to achieve even years ago. Some within insurance would say, within actuarial space, we're already doing data science. We're already doing this machine learning at scale. And, if you look at the predictive analytics they have completed over a period of time, I think they've done quite well. But as we go forward, we want to take that same kind of concept and apply it to other capabilities within our organization. Within the claims management space, how can we start to augment machine learning techniques within the claims handling process and, bring more data and leverage larger data sets to improve the handling process? How can we fast track certain claims and reduce the overall processing time as we go forward? Key thing with insurance, it's really expense conscious. How can we reduce the handling costs through the use of AI, machine learning, and other data analytics techniques? I think the other piece was, I knew data is the new oil, but algorithms are going to be key as well. As we go forward, they're going to be able to identify patterns within data and help us, reduce the fraudulent claims within the claims process. Over time, I suspect those are going to have, we're going to enable some self-learning abilities within the AI space that will allow us to quickly identify fraudulent claims, not necessarily before they happen, but as they're happening, almost real time. And over time, we're going to, faster customized claim settlement. Everyone's going to be independent, unique versus today. And that sort of transitions into the whole underwriting process as well and how we prevent loss. How can we start to look and gather more data from your Apple Watch and your Fitbit and translate that into someone's life? And how can we start to provide a preventative approach to health insurance? And how can we start to use that data to reduce their life insurance premiums? And how can we start to think differently about how we process that data? AI is going to help enable that as we go forward. And lastly is the whole marketing and customer experience opportunity. Today we're using Google Home and Alexa to create that integrated customer user experience. And when you take off the covers of those Google Home and Alexa, it's underpinning AI. And how do you start to look at how can we recognize you? How can we start to interact in a more real-time environment with the end client? And how is the client feeling? Completing the sentiment analysis, leveraging natural language processing, all core tenets of AI. But really, it's about personalization. So we go from all this data, this insurance company that's this massive corporation, and then using the use of AI, additional data, larger data sets, that we can start to enable a conversation that's specific to that individual. And I think, as we go forward, those opportunities are going to become more and more prevalent. And I think, as we leverage cloud, as we leverage all these open source networks in terms of machine learning, deep learning, we're going to be in the same competitive space in these startups. So how do we need as an organization to think about from an enterprise point of view, we're on the same path of the insurtechs, but how can we be smarter? How can we leverage and defend our organization, our brand, and think differently to create those new opportunities that will really benefit our clients as we go forward. So, Stephen, over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much. You touched all the bases in under 10 minutes. I'm impressed, and more importantly, you probably generated about 20,000 questions that I'm sure are going to pop up here shortly. So, thanks for sharing. Our third and final panelist and presenter here is Patrick Egbunonu, and I will share some information about Patrick. Most importantly, he's a professor, and since we're running slightly ahead of time, I'm going to let him put his professorial hat on and take all the time he needs, to explain what he has to share with us today. But here's some background. Patrick is an artificial intelligence and data analytics applied researcher, social entrepreneur, a coach, and a professor. He held leadership roles in financial, energy, consulting, auto, data science industries, and most recently was the manager of group underwriting, new business, amendments, and analysis at one of the leading Canadian insurance companies. In addition, he has 2 Masters of Business Administration degrees from Queen's University in Kingston, I must say my alma mater, and from Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. Patrick, we're looking forward to your comments.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for that introduction. I'm glad to be on this panel. I think when it comes to driving action from AI and advanced analytics in insurance, I'm very glad to have heard Kamana and Craig speak to the different opportunities within the industry and within in the space. And I think there's whole lot of opportunities for different companies to leverage AI and big data analytics to not just enhance the customer experience, but also to improve revenue and to reduce expenses. Coming from the group background, I know how important expense reduction is with regards to profitability. And so I see lots of opportunities when it comes to claims management, customer experience, underwriting to apply any different capabilities that AI and big data presents to achieve those objectives. One of the things I've noticed in my work with different industries is a lot of time when people think about AI or when companies think about AI and big data analytics, they always ask the question, where do I start from? What do I do? How do I get into the game? I remember a couple of months ago, I had opportunity to meet with a client in a different industry, and the first question they asked me, they said, Patrick, what tool should we buy to help us get into the game? And I said, that's the wrong question to be asking. It's not about buying the latest tool. It's not about hiring the brightest talent. Those are important. And I said it's about understanding how your analytics framework will help your business achieve its strategic objectives. It's about, first of all, understanding your overall objective as a company. Where are you trying to get to? What's your overall strategy? What are your goals? What's important to your customers? What's important in your industry? What's your competitive edge? And then asking the question around how can AI, how can big data, how can analytics help us to achieve these goals? How can analytics and AI help set us apart within our industry? And so one of the things I encourage my client, I say, you know what, you have to think about the non-sexy part of analytics and AI. The aspect of analytics and AI that involves a lot of thinking, a lot of work, a lot of background stuff, and that has to do with building the right framework to support your overall strategy. Asking the questions around, what kind of data do we need? What kind of infrastructure or architecture do we need to have in place? How do we access the data? What about quality? What about privacy? Who owns the data? How do we protect the customer's identity? Asking questions around BI tools. What kind of tools do we need? What about our people, the culture? What kind of culture do we have to build? What kind of culture are we building within our organization? Asking questions around what do we want to measure? Why is it important? How does it tie into our strategic objectives? How does it tie into our strategic goals? Asking questions around, what kind of tools, algorithms, teams do we have to be in place? And so really stepping back to think about what I call the analytics framework, an AI framework that is needed, required to support an organization's goals and objectives. And so what you may find is that the framework for one organization may be different from the framework for another organization because they have different strategic goals. And so right now, my students are working with 3 different companies and I'm helping them to build the right framework, the right strategic framework, the right strategic analysis framework to support their overall strategic goals. And I think a lot of time that's really that's a great starting point to step back and understand the big picture, understand again our overall arching objective as a company, but really understand and ask the questions around what kind of framework from an analytics perspective, from an AI perspective, we need to put in place to help us achieve our overall strategic goals. Okay, back to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Patrick. We are going to begin the Q&A session, and I'm sure there are a lot of folks with a lot of questions. But since I'm controlling the mic, I'll take advantage of the opportunity to start things off by asking Patrick a question that came to mind as he was speaking. Patrick, you mentioned how you have worked with companies to build good analytics frameworks for them to start focusing on strategies. And what I'd like to know, to the extent you can share it, is where you find most of those companies, the companies you work with, where do you find them starting the analytics and AI journeys within either their lines of business or their areas of operation? You know, do you see more focus on P&C versus other, more focus on claims versus underwriting, or is there no common starting area?
Thank you very much, Stephen. Great question. What I find, again, I've had the opportunity to work with companies in different industries, and not just insurance. But where I find the common starting point is a clear definition of who the customer is, a clear definition of who is the customer, and what do we want to know about the customer, and how does knowing that about the customer help us achieve our overall strategic objectives. And what I found is once you start asking those questions, and then it goes back to, okay, what kind of data do we need to collect, or are we collecting today? If you think about the point that Craig mentioned, you know, in insurance space, a lot of information or data about customers are found in legacy systems. How do we digitize that information? How do we integrate all the information we know about customers in order to have a single point of view? I used to work in the insurance space, and I know one of the challenges that we had was the fact that different departments to see different aspects of a customer. You didn't really have that integrated single view of a customer. And so how do we have a singular view of the customer and understand who the customer is, and make sure that we're capturing the right data around the behaviors of the customer? That's where I found the most common starting point.
Thank you very much. If I may, let me extend some of your comments to the other panelists, and then we'll open up the floor, so to speak, to both Kalmna and Craig. What I took out of what Patrick just shared was that customer engagement may be an area of high priority for carriers, particularly when it comes to applying AI and analytics. From your own perspectives, have you found customer engagement to be a relatively high priority? I know there's always multiple priorities, but I'd like to get a sense of where it falls on the priority scale of developing effective AI and analytics programs from your experience. So, Kalmna, I'll ask you first. I'm not hearing Kalmna. Perhaps she's temporarily dropped or is on mute. So while we're waiting for Kalmna to rejoin, Craig, could you respond?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really about customer centricity. A lot of insurance firms, they work within products. We have life insurance, group products, group benefits, retirement services, etc. A lot of, from a client perspective, they only see your brand. They don't see the inner workings of your organization. To really truly service, and have that high level of customer experience and engagement, it really need that, single view of the customer and our client, and how that really needs to be built out in terms of having that, again, foundational data 101 constructs built out in your organization that would allow you to enable other capabilities. So if you have that single view of the client, customer interactions sort of aligns with, the omni-channel, are they accessing through web, mobile, chatbots, etc. And really providing a seamless, customer client experience is really key. But those data points start to bring those, data points together, and then, provide, other opportunities for, predictive analytics. How is that customer going to interact? Leveraging, voice recordings, doing sentiment analysis against that data. Is the client happy? Are they distressed? How can we help them? How can we enable that, higher level experience? But bringing all those various data points into that, 360 seamless, client understanding that's going to drive some capability. But what I think, a lot of times today is that we sort of jump into, I want advanced analytics, I want to do AI, but there's a lot of, key foundational constructs that are absolutely essential to enable those higher level opportunities that AI may provide in the future.
Okay, I think that was a yes, but a well described yes. Do we have Palmer back on with us?
Yes, I'm back on, and I apologize for that technical difficulty there. And I completely agree with what Patrick said there. I think providing a seamless customer experience is a must-have. It's not a nice-to-have anymore. And culturally, organizationally, we have to look at data processes as well, and culture as one cohesive instrument in driving that seamless customer experience rather than the silos, which is often the reality today. Culture has been mentioned a few times, and it is so important, not just in having the right sound bites. I think we are still at a stage where AI is still about companies coming out with sexy sound bites. It has to evolve from that to actually making customer impact, actually delighting the customer. It really needs to be ingrained. It needs to start with curiosity. We need to encourage a culture of questioning status quo in the spirit of growth, efficiency, innovation, and really servicing and delighting customers. So I think some transformation needs to happen in the organizations. It's not an easy thing to solve for, but there is I think an overarching realization that this is absolutely integral area for organizations to focus on and to start transforming themselves really from top down and bottom up.
Thank you for that. Let me just tag on to one of your comments. I'll share with everybody that I recently had a conversation with a group of private equity investors who specialize in the insurtech space, and one of their comments, I guess complaints, was that almost every startup that is pitching them now is putting AI somewhere in the presentation or in the title of the product, even if it doesn't exist in the product. So, things have definitely reached a silly pitch in terms of sound bites for sure. But I think a rationale will prevail here. The audience is itching to get some questions in. I'm going to go to the attendee questions now, if I may. I'm going to start with the first one. How can AI help with compliance, particularly anti-money laundering? Anybody want to raise their virtual hand on that one? No takers? Okay, so none of you have yet had experience in AML fraud with analytics, or do you know whether? Go ahead.
I'm happy to add a comment on that. I am working on something that is to do with launching capabilities for our sales platform, and fraud and corruption is a major challenge for FIs, and it is where we can really leverage artificial intelligence. We haven't done a good job of it as an organization, mostly because there is a bit of a knowledge gap in the organizations on how to actually leverage it, and there is also a bit of I think still fear of working with fintechs and insurtechs, who are actually the ones that are delivering the right solutions for fraud and corruption. Real-time fraud analysis and analytics is a reality today. There are solutions out there for it, but I think the larger organizations need to embrace them and, really ingrain them in the ecosystem rather than just fintechs providing but not having big organizations such as insurance firms and banking utilizing their some real fantastic solutions out there. So I am involved in looking at real-time fraud analytics, real-time compliance AML analytics, real-time sanction screening, real-time OFAC screening. These are all solutions out there today. People just aren't aware of it and aren't adopting it enough as a result of it. But it is definitely something that has direct customer delighting impact. So it is something that, people should really, when I say people, I include myself in that we need to educate ourselves. We need to expand our ecosystem to working with more smaller fintechs and insurtechs. Sometimes large organizations do not have processes that allow for that as nimbly as is needed to be able to leverage these solutions out there.
Thanks so much, Kamna. I'm sure that's a. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, no, I was going to just add is that real challenge in the Canadian market with dealing with fintechs and insurtech is that the OSCE and the regulatory environment that we all work within, and challenging in the fact that startups are not really they can work independently of OSCE and a lot of these compliance and regulatory demands that are placed on the banks and the insurance firms, et cetera. So it's how do we work with those insurtechs and fintechs and bring them into the fold, ensure that we have compliance and legal and other considerations around, because in a lot of spaces, especially with Sun Life, we value the brand, value your data, a lot of personal data that we do value and secure it appropriately that other fintechs and insurtechs may not appreciate. So it's really bringing those two cultures together and blending those opportunities into that, bringing those new capabilities into your organization and adopting them as you go forward.
No, thanks for adding the color on the regulatory. I appreciate it. If there's no other comments on that question, I have another.
Stephen, I have one comment from an applied perspective regards to compliance. I think there are opportunities to leverage chatbots maybe in the future or right away when it comes to the area of compliance. I think about advisors and customers that have to be kept up to date on all the regulatory changes. And I remember I was talking with a colleague around building applications for the industry, and we said, why can't we have chatbots that are integrated with different regulatory bodies that advisors can access and use to find out, what is the newest regulation about this, or what has changed about this, or what has changed about that. And so I see, even when it comes to compliance, you think about all the documents that they have to review and all the things they have to know. Can we have chatbots in place for all those documents that will be updated on a regular basis, and advisors, customers, and even insurance companies can use to know what is the most up-to-date regulation regarding a certain idea or regarding a product?
That's a really interesting idea because compliance and compliance to the regulatory environment, demands a dynamic, real-time solution. Chatbots are perfect. So thanks for sharing the thought. You may have spawned a new business somewhere out there just now. I'm going to go to the next question, which is, as a reinsurance broker, how can I structure my career to adjust with this changing environment? I mean, a certificate in data analytics as CPT, or what other, would that suffice, or would it require, I'm trying to read in a chat box here, or would it require a complete change of career with a full university degree? So, Patrick, that sounds ready-made for you.
Steven, I kind of felt you're gonna say that. Uh, that's a great that's a great question. So I teach at the college, and I'm the program coordinator, or the program director for our analytics program, and I have a lot of individuals that apply to the program at different levels of their career, who are thinking about analytics, big data, AI, and saying, what do I have to learn? Do I have to go back to school? I think there's a lot of questions I think you have to ask before you can get the right answer. I think the question again depends on where you are in your career. Where you see yourself 5 years, 10 years from now, and what is important to you. And so, for example, I have 21-year-olds that have just finished an engineering degree and thinking about getting into data science. I mean, for that kind of person, well, if you enroll in a data science program at different universities, if you learn R, Python, programming, all those kind of stuff, that's cool. And so for that individual to invest their time learning programming stuff around data science and including that with statistics and all of that is cool. But also I have another individual who is in their 50s and who's been a director, a senior leader for a long time and thinking about gaining more exposure and more knowledge in the data science or in the analytics field and AI. For that individual, it may not be helpful for them to start learning, programming, R and Python. Is there a strategic analytics program they can take to get a high level overview from what's happening in AI and data analytics? Is there a course they can take online? Is there programs in universities? I know some universities have different programs tailored towards senior leaders, executives, and business owners. And so I think it all depends on the person's background, what they're trying to get out of it, and where they see themselves 5 years to 10 years from now.
Thanks. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I thought you were well qualified. Do either Kamna or Craig want to answer really, if you generalize the question, it is, I think I would say what it's asking is, if you're sort of halfway through a career in the insurance industry as a reinsurance broker, but you don't want to get left behind by the shifts in technology, particularly AI and analytics, how can you get educated and get smart quickly, and what resources are there to accomplish that? So if Kamna or Craig have any comments, we'd all be glad to hear them.
Sure, I'm happy to provide some color on my similar predicament and how I have or am going about it. And I think I would probably sum it up as, we all need to have the adaptability to change, and that is what this is about. This is a shift in our industry landscape, and how I have responded to the shift is by being excited about it, by being learning about what my experience, what fundamentally I am, how does that marry with this exciting shift that is going on, because I am a consumer of this shift and I'm benefiting from it. So how can I contribute to it? So how I've gone about it is learn about it, read about it voraciously, and continuous learning is something that I personally quite enjoy. So, I do like to go back and take courses. I do like, even if they're short-term courses, executive education courses, or they're online courses. All of these things do help us, build that knowledge base and adapt to both the change. And also, when there is a change such as this happening, there is another reality, which is that there is a talent gap. And so, it also helps us contribute to bridging that talent gap, I feel.
Thanks, Kamna. Craig, anything further?
Yeah, I think that, years ago, you had to do your, sign up for college courses, university courses. You had to actually, go to the class. What's changed over the past couple of years? All the available online courses, the training opportunities, the information to understand, how to do machine learning, how work some of the complexities through AI that just wasn't available years ago. You have folks on YouTube who are, will actually walk you through data science 101, how to actually expand your expertise and knowledge. So as we go forward, a lot of this, knowledge and expertise is going to be democratized into the hands of everyone, and it really becomes up to you to go online and find the opportunity. There's still, we're still, looking within, my group is, especially, looking for, PhDs, very highly skilled individuals as well, because, we have large problems to solve. But for, the average, individual who's caught up in this transformation, I think there's a lot of opportunity that they can quickly understand and participate in this shift as it occurs.
Thank you so much. Great input, everybody. I think.
Can I add something?
Of course.
I wanted to also add that conferences and webinars like these also are also great opportunities for learning, and so I just wanted to throw that in there too.
Yeah, great. Not to mention which they're free, so even more valuable, right? Here's a question. It's really a restatement of a question I asked earlier on, but we're going to try again, and it is here. Can you highlight specific use cases or early wins where you see the insurance industry getting the most value out of AI and analytics, which justifies the cost of the investment? And I think I'll start with Kalmna and then ask everybody else, the others, for input if they have it.
I think we were just discussing about fraud, and I know that I'm keen to onboard some of these solutions for some of these AI and machine learning techniques to create early warning systems and minimize human errors. So that I'm definitely closely looking at fraud, AML, and also, data analytics is a whole different stream in itself, not just with AI, but, even making sense of your strategy, even making sense of what the customers are telling you. We have so much data that we aren't doing anything with. So, there is that opportunity to actually run a lot of these in-depth data analytics to understand where the shift is happening, what are our customers' problems out there, what are the opportunities out there, what are their behaviors, from what we think is the reality versus what is the reality. The data has a lot of answers. We just need to learn how to ask the questions.
Thank you. Anyone else on sort of early wins or use cases that prove ROI? Some people call this low-hanging fruit, whatever you might want to refer to it.
Yeah, I think it's a shift of how we typically thought about building up capabilities within the organization. A lot of times with AI and machine learning and data science, it's iterative. There's really no end point. You're going to build capabilities as you go forward. Previous, when you deploy a customer relationship management system, you deploy it out, people start using it, and it basically you sort of capitalize that over 3 to 5 years. This is different. There's really no end point, and it's only as you add more data to the conversation, you're going to be able to glean more insights and more capability. So it's a need to shift the thinking in terms of this ongoing approach rather than the traditional one and done, and then we'll move on to something else. So it's kind of really a significant shift for both the business and IT of how this will work as we go forward.
I think I hear you saying, Craig, that the commitment is long-term and continuous.
Long-term, transformational, absolutely.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. Patrick, anything to add to that before we watch the clock and try to get to a couple more questions?
I think one area that comes to mind. So again, my background is group insurance, is in the area of underwriting, in the sense that I think about when it comes to the traditional approach to underwriting. What is our conversion rate? A lot of time it's pretty low. So you think about all the investment that goes into finding a client or renewing a policy. Again, within the group insurance space, I think there are huge opportunities to leverage again AI applications, algorithms, and to better understand a potential customer and to predict the likelihood of a customer actually buying our product. Yeah, so that's one use case I wanted to throw out there.
Thank you. There is a question here, but I'm going to shorten it. It was rather lengthy, but the thought is important. The question is, how in specific or practical ways do analytics and AI help achieve customer centricity? There's probably a number of ways of answering this question, but I'll ask each of you if you'd like to try. Craig, you want to begin with that? What's the intersection of AI and analytics to customer centricity? How does it impact?
Yeah, I think really need to build a the customer centricity program, really understand your client. But as those data points come in through various web, mobile, and other channels, machine learning AI starts to enable deeper insights that we just cannot get to at today. Looks at patterns in terms of the customer client behavior, how often they call in, how often they interact with the website, looking at their claims profile and when they typically file a claim. So a lot of I think opportunities that as long as we have the data and we have it standardized and curated to that client, we can create additional deeper insights than we cannot necessarily achieve today. So I think that having that platform as we go forward will sort of enable some of those deeper client insights and experiences that I think a lot of organizations are looking for, and AI and machine learning will certainly enable that.
Thank you.
I can give another example, and as I'm putting on my client hat as well as business person hat, and as a client, I'm often doing a lot of this stuff, or as a customer, I'm often doing a lot of stuff on my mobile. And I want to do things quick and easily within 30 seconds if possible. Like that is my nirvana. And when I am not able to do that, it's a little bit frustrating. And then, as time lapses, it becomes frustrating to me actually dropping out of that transaction. So AI is very relevant there. AI is the invention AI is, it's all about actually helping the customer. So real time, filling out a long form, for example, if I can just input one or two pieces of information rather than every time have to fill out many different forms, especially with the same organization. I just filled out a form for a credit card. Why do I have to fill out the same information for getting an insurance with the same organization? If that can be done with just me providing my basic information, and then there's a real-time check powered by AI, there you go. You have just delighted me because you understand, when I say you, I mean the organization understands that I'm the same customer. They have the tools to actually talk to different parts of the organization, and I can get what I need to do within 30 seconds. And, everybody wins because there isn't that much manual processes. There isn't that much room for error. There isn't that much transaction dropping out. So, that is definitely something both as a customer and a business owner, I would be motivated in investing.
Thanks. Those are very practical areas of response. Patrick, do you have any other insights on areas of focus, early wins?
Absolutely. When it comes to customer centricity, so the example I like to use is if you go online to buy a book on Amazon. If you go online to buy a book on Amazon, you go online to buy just one book. Before you check out, you get a notification from Amazon that says, hey, you bought this book. Do you want to buy these other books? Because other users like you bought this other book. And what that does for you as a customer is that helps you to make better decisions. And so at the end of the day, you went online to buy one book, but then you end up buying two or more books. And you're happy because now you have the books you need to know what you wanted to learn in the first place. And for Amazon, they're happy because they're making more money off your purchase. And so I think about insurance product purchase. If a client goes online, for example, to buy life insurance, and they're thinking about product A, well, are we able to use machine learning, collaborative filtering, to recommend to the customer and say, hey, you're looking at buying this product, but other customers like you also bought this other product. Now, again, I know there's a thin line between doing that and advising a customer, but I think that's the way of the future where customers go on with the intent to buy a single product. But we now use machine learning, we use collaborative filtering to recommend to the customers other products they may want to buy based on all the data that we have within our systems.
Thanks, Patrick. Unfortunately, I do have to respect the clock, and we have many more questions than we have seconds left to deal with them. So in sort of conclusion, let me just wrap this up by saying, first of all, thank you to our three panelists for participating, for taking the time out of busy days, and mostly for sharing years and years of expertise on these subjects. That it's quite clear that everybody's interested in learning as much as they can about these subjects. One of the ways to do that is to participate, attend the Insurance Analytics Canada Conference, September 25th, 26th. Everybody who's registered on this call will receive a brochure from Insurance Nexus, from Mariana, with all of the details and information about special extra discounts available to all of today's attendees. So again, I thank you all profusely for taking the time. It's been wonderful. We look forward to hearing your presentations at the conference. I look forward to meeting everybody there. And thank you so much, everybody, for taking the hour this morning.
Likewise. Thank you very much. See you soon.
You bet. Have a good day, everyone.